Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has challenged public officials to apply what he describes as common sense policies to fight poverty in the country. Osinbajo, who chaired the inaugural meeting of National Steering Committee of the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy at the presidential villa, said that the federal government will apply common sense policies to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. According to him, the strategy will not be based on business as usual. The question is, what are those common sense policies that Nigeria needs to apply now to grow its economy and reduce poverty? How feasible are these policies in the context of Nigeria's political economy? And to discuss, Rise News analyst, Associate Professor Sam AMADI joins us now. Very warm welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
The questions have already been asked, but common sense, would that mean creativity, being ingenious and the rest to lift 100 million people out of poverty? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the Vice President said something like, we're not going to follow textbook. There will be paperwork, there will be theories, but basically he thinks that there are certain common sense things you can do. And by the way, if you look at it that way, the meeting involved some officials from state governments. Much of the poverty is at the level of states, some of the states in Nigeria. So if you look at it, Nigeria is very poor. But if you look at some states, they are perhaps outliers. They are contributing more to the poverty. So the question is, how are you going to align state policies to this federal strategy? The federal government has a lot of programs, cash transfers, asset acquisition programs. But the question is there coherence with state practice? So if much of the poverty is rural, and much of the success stories across the world, you mentioned Bangladesh, where those policies, they're actually targeted at grassroots and local communities in terms of building infrastructure, social and physical infrastructure, education, healthcare. So most of the transfers and most of the skilling that people need to acquire resources they need and assets to employ themselves, improve their life, happen at a local level. But in Nigeria today, there's virtually no local government. The design of local government is that it becomes a tier of government that has more capacity and closeness to people to do targeted transfer. For example, what we're learning from other countries is that if you want to do cash transfer, it must be targeted to the people and geography that needs it most, and targeted in a manner that they have incentive to quit to do work. So it's more like workfare. But the question is, federal government cannot, the way we are running the economy today and the policy framework, there's so much disconnection, there's so much incoherence, and so the common sense policy in our own case will be first to fix politics, fix the way the policies are designed and targeted, create a much more national approach to policy. Under Obasanjo, there was need to, when the Okonjo-Iweala and his team tried to create a legislation to stop misuse of local government funds, the Supreme Court said, you just can't do that. Just give them the money and leave them. So really, the question is, are we really dealing with a common sense policy framework required to optimize the value of these cash transfers and some of this good economic policy? And that's where we are failing, politics, structure and policy.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you there, policy and give it to the states to implement. Like some critics who say, what is the federal government setting up the National Directorate of Employment for example, when majority of its own employees are public servants? You get the point. And we're looking at business entrepreneurship now in 21st century world. Why not fan out search services to the states, or the government takes off its hands completely?
Absolutely. What that means, the government, in the federal system of government, economics is that the government design policies, create incentive for that policy to be purchased by states that have, like I said, the constitutional duty, that has the local impact, and of course, the communities to cater for. Now, the problem is that, first, political parties, they are not ideological. They're not even coherent. Now, the ruling party can't even do the convention because of crisis everywhere. Now, if you have a party system in Nigeria that is structured in a way that the party in government is a developmental party, that means it's the carrier of that development, then you can be sure that they will mainstream it to the states, and there will be a lot of coherence and convergence. So federal government will best practice. States will purchase it, implement it. The federal government will monitor. And federal government will also use cash transfer. The way we share our money under the fiscal framework regime is such there's no leeway to reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. Yeah. So the state government is going to share money at certain established framework. Now the states take those funds. They are not required to purchase those policies. They don't even have the capacity to implement them, and the federal government itself has no capacity to monitor. You see, development is iterative. You do again, you do again, and it requires executive attention. We don't have that. We are an economy that's sharing resources, not producing. So the federal government doesn't even care how Jigawa is doing, because Jigawa is not contributing anything into that flow of allocatable resources. The federal government doesn't care how much Lagos is improving its commercials, or how Imo is doing with helping with agriculture and human capital, because these things do not. The federal government is just sharing the money, and the money comes from oil. So primarily, the failure of this policy, like Chris said, is correct. States should be running this, and states should be using private sector, non-profit people. But the first crisis is policy is not coherent. Policy is not strong. And then you have to invest in non-economic issues like infrastructure, no roads. How do you also education, primary education, public education, retraining, entrepreneurship? So if you want people to exit poverty, you can't employ them in the public sector. How are you helping them acquire critical soft skills that enable them, especially in digital age, to access job overseas, to create value? Also freedom. Nigeria has shrunk so much in freedom. If you look at the Freedom House assessment, Nigeria is doing badly. In fact, the recent one from Chandler Good Governance Index, Nigeria is about only the second to the bottom in the vital. So that means entrepreneurship wouldn't work, because people need to be free, creative environment that enables them to create wealth. So even if we're looking at growth strategy, we're only looking at oil and looking at maybe big companies, looking at ease of doing business, but we're not looking at the software of entrepreneurship, which is a free society that's innovative, creativity. It can't flourish when people are clamped down, when people cannot make space. So there are a lot of non-economic, political, economic constitutions that we are missing out, and I don't think of course, we already lost 7 million.
No middle manpower anymore.
And then
I'll come to that later. I think
Dr. AMADI, Dr. AMADI, I mean, we talk about the targeted publics, you know, and the common sense, and of course, the federal government saying in another 10 years, which is just a decade, they'll be able to take out 100 million people from poverty, whereas we're still struggling to get this targeted audience. So, you know, the right resources to go to the right people. How practicable is it then?
I don't think the federal government meant people to take them serious on 100 million. By the way, look at it. The World Bank says, incredibly, that you've got 7 more million into poverty in 1 year. They've not even looked at COVID outcome. They're looking only at inflation. You know, if you look at the income crunch, people suffer because of losing job, low income. Even agricultural people work in the rural areas. They couldn't go to the farm and all that. Displacement by conflicts and all that. Yeah. So you probably have about 12-15 million people who have got into more poverty. So how are you going to take them 100 million? That means every year 10 million people, and you're losing 7 million people. So that's first. Sincerity is not there.
Are we? Are we? I mean, is the government really articulating? I mean, like you said, policy. I remember in the 70s, maybe up to mid 80s. The advent of the polytechnics, you know, to churn out semi-skilled graduates, you understand, who can fill critical sectors of the economy, from the oil industry to the construction to the automobile and the rest. We don't seem to have that again because of the deviation from technical education. Where in the polytechnic now, they are running business administration, they are doing accountancy, you know, subjects that are not really allied to that development of mid-level manpower.
Yeah, and that's an important point, because if you look at, we're talking about TVET, technical vocational education. Training. Now, mainstreaming it in maybe the secondary school level, but the critical issue is there's two. One is the quality of even the vocational training. Right. We complain about lack of manpower in terms of finesse, of mason, bricklayers. You know, semi-skilled labor is very poor in Nigeria. We're even going outside the West African shores to get them, West African countries. The second is, where capacity building skilling has worked to create economic growth and reduce poverty is annexed to industry. That means you have to train people for a ready industry that needs them, and the industry will inform the model and the philosophy.
In the good old days have technical departments like the African Timber and Plywood, UAC, Leventis, you know,
so if you are training people for aviation, it should be the aviation industry that will, you know, annex to it, so that they'll be able to know the requisite skills, because skill requirements are changing. So you don't train people who will not fit into the existing industries and workplaces. So we need a lot of coherence in the policy. I think the problem is that, look, the policies we are doing these days are not policies that they require much more attention, database, and the quality of governance. Politics, now we're building up to 2023, everywhere is about politics, election. So what is the bandwidth for federal and state government to, you know, drive coherent policies, even implement them? Again, look, if you look at the countries that do poverty alleviation well, it's a big, big policy work. You have to track everything, evaluate. You have to have people who are dedicated to it. And it's not politics. It's not about soundbites. Oftentimes, government focus on the media and the publicity of those efforts. Think about the investment program during the COVID. Now, apart from the reports, the impact assessments, where is it happening? How much have states collect 4 billion for this kind of interventions? And for example, Imo State, they go people at the stadium, okay? People come to the stadium, they sang songs, jubilated. Now, nobody has seen the policy document that identify who are these poor people.
Nobody has seen even what they've produced from the policy document, from the money given.
And who are you giving it to, and what do you expect them? How do you monitor their improvement, either in skill, or, and how do you follow up? How do you also build capacity for financing, learning, marketing for those who want to set up? So it requires a lot of work, and that's why we're not making any progress. If you look at China, Bangladesh, India, countries have made some progress. The critical thing is that, look, government takes poverty reduction as the main governance project. It's not an add-on. It's not just, you know, something that you do in addition to doing policy. It should be the main, the center and the heart of economic growth strategy.
Just like the People's Bank in Bangladesh, that is the hub, you know, for the financial disbursement of funds, monies to
those who need it.
Exactly. Who need it.
And they track them.
And People's Bank failed in Nigeria.
Well,
because
it's
not even with it.
It was decided as People's Bank, like another bank. You know, it didn't
so just give them the money.
Exactly, it didn't have the database of people who are targeted. And then scalable, number. You need something massive to get people moving. So if you give people 5,000 every month, maybe 2 to 3 months, how are you supporting it with education, with healthcare? Because the real thing about poverty in Nigeria is that not just income-based poverty, vulnerability is very high. We have no social protection. Even the traditional safety nets are no longer destroyed. There are no modern ones replacing them. Compared with Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria has the worst in terms of, for example, prenatal care. You don't have support for women who are pregnant. In some of these countries, they provide support, food, all kinds of things to help them. So Nigeria is very low on vulnerability protection. The human capital is also low. We're not doing much to expand education. Think about 10 million or more people out of school enrollment. And think about women who are missing in most of Nigerian states in the workplace and in, you know, distributable income. How are you going to do? Because the face of poverty is largely children and women. And if they are not being targeted, then you're not going to deal with it.
Absolutely. Associate Professor Sam AMADI, Arise News Analyst, thanks for dissecting some of the issues. You know, we can't possibly exhaust it now.